A desperate voice in the darkness. The phone screen glowed to 47 a.m. When it shattered the silence of Rachel Morgan's tiny apartment, her heart hammered against her ribs as she fumbled for the device, knocking over a half-empty coffee cup in the process. Late-night calls never brought good news. "Hello?" Her voice came out scratchy, thick with interrupted sleep.
Rachel.
The voice on the other end was barely recognizable, choked with pain and fear. "Please, I need you." Rachel shot upright in bed, suddenly wide awake. "Brianna? What happened? Where are you?" San Francisco General Hospital. Brianna Hayes had been Rachel's closest friend since their freshman year at Berkeley, the sister she never had. "I fell down the stairs at home. They said I broke my hip and 3 ribs. The doctors are talking about months of recovery, and Dad is completely lost. He doesn't know the first thing about taking care of someone who can't even walk to the bathroom alone, without hesitation." Rachel was already pulling clothes from her closet with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to her ear with the other. "I'm coming. First bus out, I promise." "But your classes, your job at the bookstore," Brianna protested weakly, "can wait." Rachel was already stuffing items into her backpack. "You were there for me when my mom got sick. You sat with me through every terrifying doctor's appointment. I'm not letting you go through this alone." The truth was, Rachel had been looking for an escape from her routine. At 20, she felt trapped between the expectations of her conservative parents, who wanted her to marry someone appropriate and settle down, and her own dreams of becoming a writer. Maybe helping Brianna would give her time to figure out what she really wanted. Arriving at a crossroads, the bus ride from Berkeley to San Francisco took 90 minutes. But it felt like hours. Rachel watched the sunrise paint the bay golden and tried not to think about what she was walking into. She'd met Brianna's father exactly twice. Once at their college orientation, and again at Mrs. Hayes' funeral 2 years ago. Both times, he'd been a distant figure, polite but preoccupied. A tall man in an expensive suit who seemed more comfortable with blueprints than people. Jonathan. Hayes was one of San Francisco's most respected architects. Known for designing buildings that somehow managed to be both modern and warm, Brianna talked about him with a mixture of love and frustration. He worked too much, felt too deeply, and had buried himself in his career after losing his wife to cancer. The hospital was a maze of sterile corridors and antiseptic smells. Rachel found Brianna's room on the 4th floor, but paused in the doorway when she heard voices inside. "Dad, you can't just take a leave of absence from the firm. The waterfront project needs you." That was Brianna, sounding stronger than Rachel had expected. "The project can wait. You're more important." The male voice was deep, carrying an authority that seemed to fill the room, but there was something else there too. Exhaustion, worry, love. Rachel knocked softly and pushed open the door. The scene before her made her chest tighten with sympathy. Brianna lay in the hospital bed, looking small and fragile in a way that was completely wrong for someone usually so full of life. And beside her stood a man who looked like he'd aged a decade in the past few days. Jonathan Hayes was not what Rachel expected. Yes, he was tall and well-built, with the kind of presence that commanded attention. But there was nothing cold or distant about him now. His dark hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes a striking shade of gray. Held a vulnerability that took her breath away. "Rachel." Brianna's face lit up despite her obvious pain. "You actually came." "Of course I came." Rachel moved to hug her friend carefully, mindful of the injuries. "What kind of best friend would I be if I let you suffer through terrible hospital food alone?" A sound that might have been a laugh escaped Jonathan. Both women turned to look at him, and Rachel felt something shift in her chest when their eyes met. Time seemed to slow, the busy hospital fading into background noise. His gaze held hers for a moment too long to be casual, and she saw surprise flicker across his features, followed by something that looked almost like recognition. "Mr. Hayes," she said, finding her voice. "I'm Rachel Morgan. We met briefly at your wife's funeral, I remember." His voice was rough, and he cleared his throat. "And please, call me Jonathan. Mr. Hayes makes me feel ancient." He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Thank you for coming. I know it's an imposition." His handshake was firm and warm, and Rachel felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm at the contact. From the way his eyes widened slightly, she suspected he felt it too. "It's not an imposition," she managed, pulling her hand back perhaps a bit too quickly. "Brianna is family to me, an unexpected connection over the next hour." As they waited for Brianna's discharge papers, Rachel learned more about Jonathan Hayes than 2 years of friendship with his daughter had revealed. He was funny in a dry, unexpected way. He listened intently when people spoke, giving them his complete attention. And when he smiled, which wasn't often, it transformed his entire face from handsome to breathtaking. She also noticed the small things. The way he tenderly adjusted Brianna's pillow without being asked. How his jaw clenched when the nurse mentioned pain medication, as if he could take his daughter's suffering into himself. The protective hand he kept on the wheelchair as they made their way to the car. As though he could shield her from any further harm through sheer force of will, the Hayes house was exactly what Rachel had imagined from Brianna's descriptions. A beautiful Victorian in Pacific Heights with high ceilings, original crown molding, and windows that framed views of the bay. It was the kind of home that whispered old money and good taste, and Rachel felt distinctly out of place in her worn jeans and Berkeley sweatshirt. "I've prepared the guest room next to Brianna's," Jonathan said, carrying Rachel's bag up the curved staircase with one hand while helping his daughter with the other. "The bathroom is shared between the 2 rooms." "I hope that's all right. It's perfect," Rachel assured him, trying not to notice how his shirt stretched across his shoulders as he moved. The guest room was lovely, decorated in soft blues and creams with a window seat that overlooked the garden. But what caught Rachel's attention was the framed photograph on the nightstand, a beautiful woman with Brianna's smile and Jonathan's eyes. Clearly taken before illness had stolen her vitality. "That's my mom," Brianna said softly from the doorway. "Dad keeps her pictures everywhere. I think he talks to them sometimes when he thinks no one is listening." The image of this strong, successful man whispering to photographs of his lost love made Rachel's throat tighten. There was something achingly romantic about it, and deeply sad the first evening that night. After helping Brianna settle into bed and take her medications, Rachel found herself alone in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to work the complicated espresso machine. She'd volunteered to make tea, thinking it would be simple. She was wrong. It's temperamental. Jonathan's voice came from behind her, making her jump. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you." He'd changed into casual clothes, jeans, and a navy sweater that made his eyes look almost silver. His hair was still damp from a shower. And Rachel caught the scent of cedar and something citrus that made her want to lean closer. "I was trying to make chamomile tea for Brianna," she admitted, stepping back from the machine. "But this thing looks like it requires an engineering degree." Jonathan smiled, a real smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "My late wife insisted on it. She said life was too short for bad coffee." His expression flickered with old pain, but he moved past it, reaching around Rachel to adjust the settings. "Let me show you." He was close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell that intoxicating scent more clearly. Rachel's breath caught as he guided her hand to the right buttons. His touch gentle, but deliberate. "Press here. Wait for the green light, then turn this dial slowly," he instructed, his breath warm against her ear. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she followed his directions. This was ridiculous. He was Brianna's father. He was 22 years older than her. He was grieving his wife. She had no business feeling this flutter in her stomach, this awareness of every place their bodies almost touched. The machine hissed and gurgled, finally producing hot water. Jonathan stepped back, and Rachel immediately felt the loss of his nearness. "Thank you," she said, focusing intently on preparing the tea. "I promise I'll figure out the house systems. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden." His voice had that rough quality again. "You're a blessing. I had no idea how I was going to manage Brianna's care and work. You showing up like this, dropping everything to help, it means more than you know." Rachel turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse race. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm, too full of possibilities that shouldn't exist. "Brianna's my best friend," she said quietly. "I'd do anything for her. Still, Jonathan insisted, moving to the refrigerator to pull out ingredients for dinner. Not many 20-year-olds would sacrifice their life to care for someone else. You're remarkable, Rachel. It's the way he said her name, with that slight emphasis, as if tasting it made something deep in her core tighten with want. This was dangerous territory, and she knew it. She should make the tea and leave. Should put distance between herself and this man who made her feel things she had no right to feel. But instead, she found herself saying, "Can I help with dinner?" Jonathan's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd ask." They worked together in surprisingly comfortable silence, Rachel chopping vegetables while Jonathan seasoned chicken. It felt domestic and intimate, like something they'd done 100 times before. Every so often, their hands would brush as they reached for the same utensil, and each time, Rachel felt that electric spark. "Brianna tells me you're studying literature," Jonathan said as he slid the chicken into the oven. "What's your focus?" "American literature, 20th century. I'm particularly interested in how women writers challenged social expectations through their work." Rachel leaned against the counter, grateful for the neutral topic. Authors like Sylvia Plath and Toni Morrison, who refused to be confined by what society thought they should write about. Jonathan's eyes lit with genuine interest. "That sounds fascinating. I have to admit I don't read as much as I should. Work tends to consume all my time." "Brianna mentioned you're designing a new waterfront development. The Embarcadero Residences." "Yes." He poured 2 glasses of wine without asking, handing one to Rachel. "It's my most ambitious project. Mixed use, environmentally sustainable. Designed to bring community back to that part of the city." As he described his vision, Rachel found herself captivated not just by his words but by the passion in his voice. The way his hands moved as he painted pictures in the air. The light that came into his eyes when he talked about creating something meaningful. "You really love what you do," she observed. "I do." He met her gaze over the rim of his wine glass. "Architecture is about more than buildings. It's about creating spaces where people can live their best lives, where they feel safe and inspired. Every structure tells a story, like books," Rachel said softly. "Exactly like books." His smile was warm, approving, and Rachel felt absurdly pleased by it. They talked through dinner preparation and continued the conversation as they ate together after taking a tray up to Brianna, who had fallen asleep. Rachel found herself sharing stories about her overprotective parents, her dreams of becoming a novelist, her fears about disappointing everyone who had expectations for her life. Jonathan listened with that complete attention she'd noticed at the hospital, asking thoughtful questions, sharing his own struggles with meeting expectations versus following his heart. By the time they finished cleaning up the kitchen, Rachel felt like she'd known him for years rather than hours. "I should check on Brianna before bed," she said reluctantly, aware that it was past 11 and she'd monopolized his evening. "Rachel." Jonathan's voice stopped her at the kitchen doorway. She turned to find him watching her with an expression that made her knees weak. "Thank you. For dinner, for the conversation, for just being here. It's been a long time since I've talked to someone like that." "Me too," she admitted. Then, because she couldn't help herself, "Good night, Jonathan." "Good night, Rachel." As she climbed the stairs to check on Brianna, Rachel's mind whirled with confusion. This wasn't supposed to happen. She'd come to San Francisco to help her best friend, not to develop feelings for a man who was completely wrong for her in every conventional way. But as she lay in the guest bed that night, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of the evening, Rachel couldn't deny the truth. Something had started today, something powerful and terrifying and entirely unexpected, and she had no idea what to do about it. In his own room down the hall, Jonathan Hayes was having similar thoughts, wondering how a 20-year-old girl with bright eyes and an easy laugh had managed to slip past all his carefully constructed defenses in the span of a single day, and more importantly, wondering what he was going to do about the fact that for the first time since his wife's death, he felt truly, dangerously alive. Morning light and new routines. Rachel woke to sunlight streaming through the guest room windows and the smell of fresh coffee drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memories of yesterday flooded back. The hospital. The Hayes house. Jonathan's gray eyes watching her across the kitchen counter. She groaned and pulled a pillow over her face. This was going to be complicated. After showering and dressing in comfortable clothes suitable for caretaking, Rachel found Brianna already awake and struggling to sit up in bed. "Let me help," Rachel said, rushing over to adjust the pillows and support her friend's back. "You're supposed to ask for assistance, remember?" "I hate being helpless," Brianna grumbled, but her expression softened. "Did you sleep okay? The guest bed isn't too uncomfortable?" "It's perfect." Rachel busied herself with checking the medication schedule posted on Brianna's nightstand. "How's the pain this morning?" "Manageable." "Rachel, I need to ask you something." Brianna's tone made Rachel look up sharply. "Last night, did you and Dad have dinner together?" "We ate after you fell asleep." "Why?" "Because when I woke up at midnight to use the bathroom, I heard him laughing. Actually laughing, not that polite chuckle he does at business dinners. I haven't heard him laugh like that since before Mom got sick." Rachel felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We just talked about books and buildings and stuff." Brianna studied her with an expression Rachel couldn't quite read. "Good. He needs that. He needs someone who sees him as a person, not just the grieving widower or the successful architect." Before Rachel could respond, a knock sounded on the door. Jonathan entered carrying a breakfast tray, and Rachel's breath caught at the sight of him. He wore charcoal dress pants and a crisped white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, ready for work but not quite finished dressing. His hair was neatly combed, his jaw freshly shaved, and he looked every inch the powerful businessman, except for the warmth in his eyes when they landed on Rachel. "Good morning," he said, setting the tray across Brianna's lap. "Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh fruit, doctor's orders for protein and vitamins." "You made this?" Brianna asked, surprised. "Rachel isn't the only one who can work the kitchen," Jonathan replied with mock offense. His gaze shifted to Rachel. "There's more downstairs if you're hungry. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made a bit of everything." "You didn't have to do that," Rachel protested, even as her stomach growled traitorously. "I wanted to." The simple statement delivered in that deep voice felt weighted with meaning. Dangerous territory the first week fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and terrifying. Rachel spent her days caring for Brianna, helping with physical therapy exercises, reading aloud when her friend grew bored, and managing the endless cycle of medications and doctor's appointments. She'd expected this part. What she hadn't expected was how much she looked forward to the evenings. When Jonathan came home from work, he'd arrive around 6, still in his business attire, looking tired, but somehow lighting up when he saw her. They'd established a routine where Rachel would have dinner started, and Jonathan would finish it while they talked about their days. Brianna usually joined them, creating a buffer that made the whole situation feel safer, more appropriate. But there were moments when their hands would brush, reaching for the same serving spoon. Moments when Rachel would catch Jonathan staring at her across the table with an expression that made her forget how to breathe. Moments when she'd look up from her book to find him watching her from his study doorway. A softness in his face that had nothing to do with fatherly concern. One evening, while helping Jonathan with the dishes after Brianna had gone to bed early, Rachel dropped a wine glass. It shattered on the tile floor, red wine splashing across the white cabinets and her jeans. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, grabbing for paper towels. "I'll clean it up. I'll replace the glass." "Rachel, stop." Jonathan caught her hands gently, pulling her away from the broken glass. "You're going to cut yourself." "Let me handle it." She'd already knelt down, reaching for a large shard, when he moved at the same time. They collided, Jonathan's arms automatically wrapping around her to keep them both from falling. For a frozen moment, they were pressed together, her back against his chest. His breath warm on her neck, his arms solid and safe around her waist. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. Rachel shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. She could feel the rapid beat of his heart against her shoulder blade, matching the frantic rhythm of her own pulse. Slowly, carefully, Jonathan released her and stepped back. The loss of contact felt physical, painful. Rachel stood on shaky legs and turned to face him, and what she saw in his eyes made her whole body flush with heat. Want, pure, undeniable want. "I should go," she whispered. "Let you clean up, Rachel." The way he said her name stopped her. "We need to talk about this." "About what?" She tried to sound innocent, but they both knew it was futile. "About the fact that every time I look at you, I forget every reason why this is impossible." Jonathan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "You're Brianna's best friend. You're 20 years old. You came here to help my daughter, not to deal with a middle-aged man who can't control his feelings." "I'm 21 next month," Rachel said, then immediately felt stupid, as if for weeks made any difference. That doesn't change the fundamental problem. Jonathan moved to the other side of the kitchen island, putting distance between them. "I'm 42. I'm your friend's father. I'm supposed to be someone you can trust and respect, not someone who makes you uncomfortable." "You don't make me uncomfortable." The words came out before Rachel could stop them. "You make me feel things I've never felt before. You make me want things I shouldn't want." The silence that followed was deafening. Jonathan gripped the counter edge so hard his knuckles turned white. "Rachel, don't. Don't what?" "Tell the truth?" Something reckless had taken hold of her, probably driven by weeks of suppressed emotions. "I came here to help Brianna, yes. But I can't pretend I don't feel this connection between us. I can't pretend my heart doesn't race every time you walk into a room." "You're young," Jonathan said desperately. "You don't understand what you're saying." "Stop dismissing my feelings because of my age," Rachel shot back, surprising herself with her vehemence. "I know my own mind, Jonathan. I know that when I'm with you, I feel seen in a way I never have before. I know that you listen when I talk, really listen, like my words matter. I know that you make me laugh and challenge me to think differently and make me want to be braver than I am." "And what happens when you realize I'm just a grieving widower with baggage and responsibilities?" Jonathan's voice cracked. "What happens when the reality of being with someone my age sets in? When your friends judge you, when your parents are horrified, when you miss out on all the normal experiences someone your age should have? What happens if we don't even try?" Rachel countered. "What if we spend the rest of our lives wondering what could have been?" Jonathan closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were filled with pain and longing in equal measure. "I can't be selfish with you. You deserve someone young and uncomplicated, someone who can give you the future you should have." "But I want you," Rachel whispered. The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Jonathan crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. "If we do this," he said, his voice low and intense, "there's no going back. I won't be able to pretend these feelings don't exist. I won't be able to watch you walk away without it destroying me." "Don't let me walk away," Rachel breathed. He kissed her then, and it was everything she'd imagined and nothing she could have prepared for. His lips were soft but demanding, tasting of wine and want. His hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and Rachel melted against him, wrapping her arms around his neck and holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jonathan rested his forehead against hers. "This is crazy," he murmured. "Completely," Rachel agreed. "Are we doing it anyway?" "God help me, yes." I took Christine Palmer. The complications started the very next day when Christine Palmer showed up at the Hayes house unannounced. Rachel was in the garden with Brianna, helping her practice walking with her cane, when a sleek silver Lexus pulled into the driveway. A woman emerged who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine, perfectly styled blonde hair, designer suit, expensive jewelry. She was beautiful in that polished, untouchable way that made Rachel suddenly aware of her own casual jeans and ponytail. "Christine," Brianna said, and there was something in her tone that wasn't quite welcoming. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about your accident and wanted to check on you." Christine's smile was bright and insincere. Her eyes, however, were assessing Rachel with obvious disapproval. "And who is this?" "Rachel Morgan, Brianna's friend," Rachel introduced herself, extending her hand. Christine's handshake was brief and dismissive. "How nice that you have friends to help out." "Where's your father, Brianna?" "At work, obviously." "It's Tuesday morning, of course." I'll just pop by his office then. Christine's gaze returned to Rachel. How long are you planning to stay? The question was innocent on the surface, but carried an unmistakable edge of territorial challenge. As long as Brianna needs me, Rachel replied evenly. That's very dedicated of you. Christine's smile sharpened. I'm sure Jonathan appreciates having such young, energetic help around the house. It must make him feel quite youthful. Implication was clear and insulting. Before Rachel could respond, Brianna intervened. Christine works with Dad at the firm. She's been trying to get him to date her for the past year. Brianna, Christine said with forced lightness. You make it sound so calculated. Your father and I are friends and colleagues. I simply think it's time he moved on with someone appropriate. Appropriate meaning your age and social circle, Brianna said bluntly. Christine's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and determined beneath. Meaning someone who understands his world? Yes. Someone who can be a proper partner for a man of his stature. She looked directly at Rachel. Someone who knows how to navigate the complexities of his life. After Christine left, Brianna turned to Rachel with concern. I should have warned you about her. She's been circling Dad like a shark since Mom died. She sees him as the perfect package. Successful, attractive, established. Does he have feelings for her? Rachel tried to keep her voice neutral. God, no. He's polite to her because she's good at her job, but he's never shown any romantic interest. That's what makes her so persistent. She's not used to men turning her down. Brianna paused, studying Rachel's face. Something happened between you and Dad last night, didn't it? Rachel's cheeks flushed. How did you know? Because both of you have been walking around today looking like you're carrying the world's best and worst secret. Brianna reached out to squeeze Rachel's hand. I'm not upset if that's what you're worried about. Honestly, I've been hoping something would happen between you two. Really? Rachel was shocked. But he's your father. You're my best friend. Which means I know you're one of the few people in the world good enough for him. Brianna's expression grew serious. But Rachel, you need to know what you're getting into. Christine isn't going to back off easily, and she has influence in Dad's professional world. She could make things difficult. I don't care about Christine Palmer, Rachel said with more confidence than she felt. She's ruthless when she wants something, and she's wanted Dad for a long time. Family pressure mounts. The situation escalated when Rachel's parents called a week later, their voices tight with barely controlled anger. We heard from the Hendersons that you're living with a man in San Francisco, her mother said without preamble. Please tell me they're exaggerating. Rachel's heart sank. The Hendersons were family friends whose son went to Berkeley. Someone must have seen her with Jonathan and Brianna around the city. I'm staying with Brianna while she recovers from her injuries, Rachel explained carefully. Her father lives here too, obviously. Her father, who is a 42-year-old widower, her father cut in. Rachel, this looks incredibly inappropriate. We raised you better than this. There's nothing inappropriate happening, Rachel lied, hating herself for it. I'm helping a friend, and come home, her mother pressed. Surely Brianna's father can afford professional care. You don't need to sacrifice your reputation by living in his house. My reputation is fine, Mom. Is it? Because we're starting to hear whispers about our daughter shacking up with an older man. Do you know how that reflects on this family? The conversation deteriorated from there, ending with her parents demanding she return home immediately and Rachel refusing. When she hung up, she was shaking with anger and hurt. Jonathan found her in the garden 20 minutes later, her face still tear-streaked. What happened? He asked, immediately concerned. Rachel explained, watching his expression darken with each word. When she finished, he pulled her into his arms, holding her against his chest while she cried out her frustration. This is my fault, he said quietly. I should have thought about how this would look, what it would cost you. No. Rachel pulled back to look at him. This isn't about you. This is about my parents trying to control my life like they always have. They want me to marry someone they approve of, live in their neighborhood, have the life they planned for me. They've never cared what I actually want. What do you want? Jonathan asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You, Rachel said simply. I want you, even if it means fighting everyone else. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Then we'll fight together. But the fights were just beginning. Christine began stopping by the house regularly, always with some excuse about needing Jonathan's input on a project. She'd show up in the evenings when she knew he'd be home, dressed impeccably, making casual comments about upcoming social events. How nice it would be to have an appropriate date. She was never overtly rude to Rachel. But her message was clear: you don't belong in his world, and I do. Things came to a head at the firm's annual charity gala. Jonathan had been planning not to attend, but Christine convinced the senior partners it was essential for the Embarcadero project. He asked Rachel to go with him as his date. "Are you sure?" Rachel asked nervously. "That's pretty public, I'm sure. I'm tired of hiding how I feel about you." Jonathan took her hands. "If we're doing this, we're doing it properly." He bought her a dress for the occasion, gorgeous emerald green gowns that made her feel like a princess and cost more than her monthly rent. When she came down the stairs the night of the gala, Jonathan's expression made every uncomfortable fitting session worth it. "You're stunning," he breathed. Offering his arm, the gala was held at a waterfront venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. It was elegant and expensive, full of San Francisco's elite. Rachel felt out of place immediately, aware of how young she looked compared to the other women. How little she knew about the business and social discussions happening around her. Christine found them within minutes, resplendent in a designer red gown that probably cost as much as a car. "You made it," she said warmly, then turned to Rachel with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And you brought your daughter's friend. How sweet." The dismissal was deliberate and cutting. Rachel felt about 2 inches tall. "Rachel is my date," Jonathan said firmly, his hand tightening on her waist. "And she looks beautiful tonight." Christine's expression flickered with something ugly before smoothing back to pleasantness. "Of course. How progressive of you." She turned to a nearby couple. "Martin, Jennifer, let me introduce Jonathan Hayes and his very young companion." The emphasis on young was intentional, and Rachel felt the couple's judgment like a physical blow. Throughout the evening, similar interactions repeated. People were polite to her face but whispered when she passed. She overheard fragments of conversations about age, differences and inappropriate relationships, and what was Jonathan thinking? She was standing alone by the windows, trying to compose herself. When Christine approached, "This isn't your world, is it?" Christine said conversationally, "All these people, these expectations. It must be exhausting trying to keep up." "I'm managing fine," Rachel replied, keeping her voice steady. "Are you? Because from where I stand, you look completely out of your depth." Christine sipped her champagne. "Jonathan is a good man, one of the best. He deserves someone who can stand beside him as an equal, not someone he has to protect and explain." "You mean someone like you? You mean someone appropriate?" "Someone who understands the demands of his career, the expectations of his social position." Christine's voice softened with false sympathy. "You're very young, Rachel. In a few years you'll look back on this and realize it was just a phase. But by then, you could have damaged Jonathan's reputation irreparably. His reputation or your plans for him." Christine's eyes hardened. "I've known Jonathan for 10 years. I was there when his wife died. I understand what he needs in ways you never will. And sooner or later, he'll realize that what he feels for you is just a midlife crisis, an attempt to feel young again after loss. When that happens, where will you be? Back in college, wasting years you could have spent building a real future." Rachel wanted to argue, but Christine's words struck at her deepest insecurities. Was she just a phase for Jonathan? Was this attraction just him trying to feel alive again after grief? Jonathan found her as Christine walked away, triumph evident in the older woman's smile. "Hey," he said softly, noting Rachel's distress. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing that wasn't true," Rachel replied, forcing a smile. "I don't fit here, Jonathan. Everyone can see it. I don't care what everyone sees." He pulled her onto the dance floor as a slow song started. "I only care what you feel." As they swayed together, Rachel tried to let his certainty ease her doubts. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Christine was right about one thing. This beautiful moment existed in a bubble. And eventually, reality would intrude. That reality came crashing in the next morning when Brianna's phone rang at breakfast. It was Jonathan's business partner with disturbing news. Someone had been spreading rumors about Jonathan's relationship with a college student, questioning his judgment and suggesting his personal life was affecting his professional decisions. Several investors in the Embarcadero project were expressing concerns. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Christine had made her move, and it was more calculated than any of them had anticipated. When everything falls apart the morning after the gala, Rachel woke to find Jonathan already gone. No note, no text, just an absence that felt deliberate. Her stomach churned with anxiety as she helped Brianna with her morning routine. "Dad left at 5, Brianna reported, her expression troubled. "I heard him on the phone. It sounded bad." Rachel tried to focus on the day's tasks, but her mind kept spinning through Christine's words, the whispers at the gala, the look on Jonathan's face when he'd gotten that call from his partner. By noon, she couldn't stand it anymore and texted him, "Are you okay?" His response came an hour later, in meetings all day. "We'll talk tonight." The brevity felt ominous. Rachel spent the afternoon trying to distract herself by deep cleaning the kitchen, but every sound made her jump, hoping it was Jonathan coming home. Instead, at 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Standing on the porch was an older couple who radiated wealth and judgment in equal measure. The woman was impeccably dressed in cream-colored slacks and a silk blouse, her silver hair styled perfectly. The man wore a business suit despite it being Saturday, his expression stern. "You must be Rachel," the woman said coolly. "I'm Patricia Hayes, Jonathan's mother. This is my husband, Richard." Rachel's heart dropped to her stomach. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, I didn't know Jonathan was expecting you." "He wasn't. May we come in?" Rachel had no choice but to step aside, leading them to the formal living room that was rarely used. Patricia's gaze swept the space critically, as if cataloging everything out of place. "Where's my granddaughter?" Patricia asked. "Brianna's resting upstairs. She's been doing physical therapy this morning and needed a break, and you've been caring for her." It wasn't a question. Patricia settled on the sofa with the air of someone preparing for an unpleasant task. "Jonathan told us he'd hired professional help for Brianna's recovery. He failed to mention that help came in the form of a 20-year-old girl living in his house." "I'm Brianna's best friend," Rachel said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I volunteered to help." "How generous," Patricia's tone suggested. It was anything but. "Tell me, Rachel, do you always sleep with the fathers of your friends?" The accusation hit like a slap. "Mrs. Hayes, I don't think that's appropriate." "What's not appropriate is a girl young enough to be his daughter, manipulating my son during a vulnerable time." Patricia leaned forward, her eyes cold. "Don't think we don't know what this is. You saw a wealthy, lonely widower and seized an opportunity." "That's not what happened," Rachel protested, her cheeks burning with humiliation and anger. "No." "Then explain to me how a 20-year-old college student ends up in a relationship with a 42-year-old man, unless there's some calculation involved." Richard finally spoke, his voice measured but equally condemning. "Jonathan has spent 2 years rebuilding his life after losing our daughter-in-law. He's raised Brianna alone, maintained a successful business, and upheld his reputation in this community. Now, because of you, that reputation is in jeopardy." "I never wanted to damage his reputation," Rachel said, hating how her voice shook. "But you have," Patricia stated flatly. "Do you have any idea the calls we've received this week? Friends expressing concern about Jonathan's judgment, business associates questioning his stability, all because he's taken up with someone barely out of her teenage years." "I love him," Rachel blurted out, then immediately felt foolish. These people didn't care about love. Love. Patricia's laugh was bitter. "You're a child playing at emotions you don't understand. Real love means putting the other person's needs first. It means protecting them, even from yourself if necessary. I would never hurt Jonathan. You already are, just by being here." Richard stood, clearly preparing to leave. "We came here hoping to appeal to your better nature, Rachel. If you truly care about Jonathan, you'll do what's right and remove yourself from his life before you cause more damage." After they left, Rachel sat in stunned silence, their words echoing in her head. She was still sitting there when Brianna navigated down the stairs with her cane. "I heard," Brianna said quietly, settling beside Rachel on the sofa. My grandparents have never approved of anything that doesn't fit their perfect image of what life should be. Maybe they're right, Rachel whispered. Maybe I am damaging Jonathan's life. Don't let them get in your head. They did the same thing to my mom when she and Dad first got together. Said she wasn't good enough because her family wasn't wealthy enough. They eventually came around. This is different. Your mom was age-appropriate. You're the woman my dad has fallen in love with. Brianna squeezed Rachel's hand. That should be all that matters. But when Jonathan finally came home at 8 that evening, looking exhausted and defeated, Rachel wondered if love was enough. The ultimatum Jonathan found Rachel in the garden. Sitting on the bench where they'd shared their first real conversation, he sat beside her, close but not touching, and for a long moment neither spoke. Your parents came by today, Rachel? Finally said. I know. They called to tell me they'd set you straight. Jonathan's jaw tightened. What did they say? Rachel recounted the conversation, watching his expression grow darker with each word. When she finished, he stood abruptly and began pacing. I'm sorry, he said finally. My parents are old-fashioned and controlling. They have opinions about everything, especially my life. They're not the only ones with opinions. Your partner called today too, asking about my age. Apparently, Christine has been very helpful in spreading information. Jonathan's hands clenched into fists. I'm handling Christine. Are you? Because from where I sit, she's winning. Rachel stood to face him. Your investors are concerned. Your parents are furious. My parents have threatened to cut me off. Everyone in your world thinks I'm either a gold digger or a naive child. How long before you start to believe them? Never, Jonathan said forcefully, closing the distance between them. I know exactly who you are, Rachel. You're brilliant and kind and brave. You walked into my life when I'd given up on feeling anything, and you made me remember what it's like to be truly alive. But at what cost? Rachel felt tears threatening. Your business is suffering. Your family relationships are strained. Is being with me really worth all that? You are worth everything. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly gentle. But I won't lie to you about how difficult this is going to be. The board meeting next week could determine the future of the Embarcadero project. If the investors pull out because they question my judgment, hundreds of jobs will be lost. People who depend on me will suffer. So what are you saying? Jonathan closed his eyes, pain etched in every line of his face. I'm saying maybe we need to put this on hold. Just until the project is secured and the immediate crisis passes. Give things time to calm down. You want to break up with me? God, no. I want to marry you and spend every day for the rest of my life proving how much I love you. The confession spilled out raw and honest. But I'm terrified that my selfishness is going to destroy both our lives. You should be in school, building your future, not dealing with this circus. And I should be focused on saving the jobs of 300 construction workers, not fantasizing about running away with a woman young enough to be my daughter. The phrase hung between them, ugly and undeniable. I'm not your daughter, Rachel said quietly. I'm the woman who loves you. But if you need space to figure out if I'm worth fighting for, then take it. She pulled away from his touch, wrapping her arms around herself. I'll stay until Brianna is fully recovered, because I promised her. But I'll move to the guest room, and we'll keep things professional, Rachel. Please. No, you're right. Everyone's right. This is too complicated, too impossible. We were fooling ourselves thinking we could make it work. She started toward the house, then paused. But for the record, Jonathan, I would have chosen you every time, no matter what it cost me. Christine's final play the week before the crucial board meeting, things went from bad to worse. Someone leaked photos to a local gossip blog, pictures of Jonathan and Rachel at the gala, their body language clearly intimate. The headline read, Prominent Architect in May-December Romance. The article was full of speculation about Rachel's motives and Jonathan's midlife crisis. It mentioned her age, her student status, the fact she was living in his home. By noon, it had been shared hundreds of times on social media. Rachel's phone exploded with calls and texts, friends asking if it was true, her mother crying about the family's humiliation. Unknown numbers sending hateful messages calling her a gold digger and worse. Jonathan released a brief statement. My personal life is private, but I will say that Rachel Morgan is a remarkable woman who deserves respect, not speculation. It only made things worse. Now, the story was about a powerful man defending his inappropriate relationship. Christine showed up at the house that evening, finding Rachel alone in the kitchen. Jonathan was working late at the office, trying to shore up support before the board meeting. I thought you might like to see what you're dealing with, Christine said, sliding a folder across the counter. Inside were printouts of social media comments about Rachel. They were vicious, calling her a slut, a homewrecker, a child playing at being a woman. There were memes mocking the age gap, speculation about how she'd seduced a grieving man, predictions about when he'd realize his mistake. This is just the beginning, Christine said, almost kindly. The internet never forgets, Rachel. These accusations will follow you forever. Future employers will Google you and find this. Potential relationships will be poisoned by it. Is that really the life you want? Why are you doing this? Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. Because I'm doing what no one else will, showing you the reality of this situation. Christine leaned forward. Jonathan is a good man who's confused right now. He's clinging to you because you make him feel young again, because you're uncomplicated and adorable and everything his life isn't. But that's not love, Rachel. That's escapism. You don't know what we have. I know that in 6 months, when the novelty wears off and he realizes you can't navigate his world, can't be the partner he needs at events and meetings, can't understand the pressures of his career, he'll start to resent you. Maybe not consciously at first, but it'll grow. And then both of you will be miserable, but you'll have wasted precious years you could have spent building your own life. Rachel stared at the hateful comments, feeling something inside her crack. What do you want from me? I want you to be smart enough to walk away before you both get hurt worse. Christine's voice softened. Go back to school, Rachel. Finish your degree. Find someone your own age who can give you the life you deserve. Let Jonathan remember you as the sweet girl who helped his daughter, not the woman who destroyed his career. After Christine left, Rachel sat alone in the darkening kitchen, surrounded by evidence of the world's cruelty. For the first time, she seriously considered giving up. The day of the board meeting, Jonathan left at 6 in the morning without seeing Rachel. She'd been awake most of the night wrestling with her decision. By dawn, she knew what she had to do. She packed her bags while Brianna slept, moving quietly through the house that had become a home. Each room held memories. The kitchen where she and Jonathan had cooked together. The garden where they'd first kissed. The living room where they'd stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. She left a note on the kitchen counter. I love you too much to let you lose everything you've built. You were right. Sometimes love means protecting someone from yourself. I'll always remember what we had. Be happy, Jonathan. Then she called for a cab and slipped out before anyone could stop her. She was at the bus station, waiting for the next departure to Berkeley, when her phone rang. It was Brianna. What did you do? Her friend demanded, sounding furious and tearful. How could you just leave like that? It's better this way. For everyone, except for Dad, who's going to be devastated when he finds out. He'll get over it. He has Christine waiting in the wings, ready to be the appropriate choice. He doesn't want Christine, you idiot. He wants you. Brianna's voice cracked. Do you know what he told me last night? He said that meeting you was like getting a second chance at life. That you made him remember how to feel joy again. And you're just throwing that away? I'm saving his career. His reputation. His future. No, you're running because things got hard. Because fighting for love is scary and uncomfortable. Brianna paused. I thought you were braver than that. The words hit like an arrow to the heart. Rachel closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing for who? Before Rachel could answer, another voice came on the line. Jonathan, where are you? His voice was rough, desperate. At the bus station. My bus leaves in 20 minutes. Don't get on that bus. Please, Rachel. Let me come get you. You have a board meeting. To hell with the board meeting. You're more important than any project, any investor, any reputation. She heard movement, the sound of a car door. I'm already in my car. Just tell me you'll wait. Jonathan, you could lose everything. I already lost everything once when my wife died. I survived that by shutting down, by not feeling anything. Then you walked into my life and taught me how to feel again, how to hope again. If I lose you because I was too much of a coward to fight for us, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. But what about the investors? The board? I called an emergency meeting this morning before I left. I told them the truth, that I'm in love with a brilliant woman who happens to be younger than me, that my personal life doesn't affect my professional competence. I told them they could accept it, or I'd walk away from the project entirely. Rachel's heart stopped. You can't do that. You've worked on Embarcadero for years. I'd give it all up in a heartbeat for you.